Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to all of you to this session entitled The Future of South Africa, 30 Years of Democracy and Beyond. Next year, South Africa will mark 30 years after the fall of apartheid. And I think it's an important moment to reflect, to look back. I don't know where to begin, but what I said to myself is, let me repeat the ills that we all know. Let me remind you what they are. Unemployment. I used the expanded definition, which is 42%. No growth, even on a per capita basis, we're declining, we're going backwards. And today, as if to illustrate that, the numbers that have just come out of Stats SA show manufacturing down 4.3% in September, mining production down 1.9%. Indebtedness. I think we all know the GDP to the debt to GDP ratios north of 70%, precisely where you don't want to be. Crime. I think the other day we all read aghast as we read that the Minister of Transport had been hijacked on the highway. And corruption is an everyday story that we all look at. But there's one shining light. Power is coming back. So how do we get back? Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our next panel and ask our panelists to come to the podium in no particular order, all protocol observed. I'm neutral. Important to declare that one. Fikile Mbalula, Secretary General, African National Congress. John Steenhuisen, Leader, Democratic Alliance. Herman Mashaba, President, Action SA. And joining us online is the President of the Economic Freedom Fighters. I am hoping he has been connected, Mr. Julius Malema. Can we see him somewhere, please? Are we going to be able to see him? I hope we will be able to see him. Is it coming on? Okay, while the picture is coming on, I think we can begin. I began by laying out, as it were, the lay of the land. And the lay of the land, as we know, is desolate. It requires attention. And I think most importantly, gentlemen, it requires political action. Political action ahead of an important milestone next year, and also the opportunity to be able to produce a result that gives the people of South Africa hope that the problems that we spoke about are going to be discussed. Here are the rules. I am going to give you about 5 minutes for each question that I ask you. If I find you are straying a little bit, I will get very agitated. And I'm hoping that you will not get me into that space. So let me start. And I'm going to move from left to right. As I said again, in no particular order, and I'm hoping that you take my words at face value. Thank you, sirs. So let me start with you, Mr. Steenhuisen. So the first question is this one. Towards a prosperous and equal nation, I would like to know the party's agenda for the future of South Africa. Your 5 minutes begin now, sir.
Well, thank you very much. And I think that, as you indicated, if one looks at any one of the metrics that is used internationally to determine whether a country is moving in the right direction or the wrong direction, in South Africa, all of these are pointing in the wrong direction. Employment is down. Our economy is hardly growing. It's stagnating. We have one of the highest unemployment rates in the world, the highest youth unemployment rates in the world. We have one of the most unsafe societies in the world where 73 of our citizens are murdered every single day. And we are in the midst of an energy crisis which is severely constraining growth, and a government ideology that clings to the state being the be-all and the end-all of controlling all levers of the economy, and in the process creating large monopolies which, when they fail, leave us incredibly vulnerable as a country. So something has to change. South Africa can't continue on this high debt, low growth, high unemployment trajectory. What we need to do is something that's going to be a shock to the system, to break the logjam in our politics and start to usher in a government that's going to understand that it is not the state's role to create jobs and to direct industry. It is the state's job to get the basic foundational framework right for economic growth to flourish. And that economic growth and opportunity can only occur when there is a partnership between government and the private sector. And that it is only through unleashing entrepreneurship and unleashing innovation in the country that we're going to get that moving forward. But to fix those key levers that one needs to get the economy moving is going to require some political change. One of the key drivers of the inequality that still exists in the country is unemployment. And at the heart of the unemployment crisis lies an education crisis. The point today where our education system is not equipping and training young South Africans with the skills that they need to be able to find employment in the workplace. 82% of grade 4 learners in this country cannot read for meaning. 62% of grade 6 teachers cannot pass the exams that they set their own students. Now, with the best will in the world, you're never going to create a job environment if our education system is failing us. So even if we were to suddenly start hitting a 6% growth rate in South Africa, which I hope that we'll be able to reach someday, we wouldn't have the skills in the country to be able to feed that economic growth. Secondly, there's no way you can grow an economy with the severe constraints on our ports, our harbors, our rail infrastructure in the country, and our road networks. And all of these are subject to government monopoly. And those government monopolies have led to a situation where our port inefficiency sits at around 365 in Cape Town, 364 in Durban. And when you compare these to other ports on the continent, you can see how far we've been left behind through this government monopoly model. And the much vaunted promise of public-private partnership has stalled in the Durban port, and the privatization and public-private partnership of the rail corridor, the Cape Corridor, has now been called off in its entirety. So we're not moving fast enough. What South Africa needs to get these fundamentals right is a government that understands what the levers of power are that you need to push to make an economy work and then to create jobs. You need to be able to get into power to make sure those things happen. South Africa needs a good dose of chemotherapy, not aromatherapy, chemotherapy. And the opportunity to be able to deliver that is in the election next year. And that's why, as the opposition, we're working together to move the hinge of history in this coming election in a direction that's going to open the door to more opportunity, more prosperity, an investor-friendly environment, a visa regime that encourages people to locate their factories here, the attraction of foreign direct investment, an international orientation that works towards where we receive our foreign direct investment from. 75% of foreign direct investment into South Africa comes from the United Kingdom, the European Union, and the United States of America. And that is a fact. Whether you like it or not, that is a fact. Only 6.2% of foreign direct investment comes from China and Russia combined. And this orientation that South Africa has put itself on is going to be a major deterrent. And then lastly, I would say that the structure of the state needs to change. We have one of the largest public services in the world. It is one of the most inefficient, and it is riddled with the effects of what is called cadre deployment, which has rendered it an incapable state in many aspects. Not even be able to get the basics right. Thank you.
Well done, well done, well done, well done, well done. Smart bang, your 5 minutes is up. I have a follow-up question, though. You didn't answer the bit about the equal society. The question was, towards a prosperous and equal nation. So you talked to the prosperous part. I didn't hear the equal part.
Well, I think the equality will come from the prosperity. And the reality is the problem here in the South African context is that we have one of the largest inequality gaps in the world. And that has widened, not narrowed, over the course of the government's empowerment programs. Black South African households are 10% poorer now than they were 10, 15 years ago. Black unemployment has grown massively. You fix this by focusing on the opportunity side of the economy, by trying to create in the country an equality of opportunity instead of constantly trying to manipulate an equality of outcome.
I.e. not through targeted programs.
No, through targeted programs that fix the drivers of inequality in the country.
Okay.
A poor education system, an economy that's floundering, public infrastructure, hospitals, all of those things are the drivers of inequality. And that is why the inequality gap is widening, because we don't spend enough time focusing on the opportunity side of the economy. The government obsesses, and its policy is almost all directed at trying to create an equality of outcome. And it has not worked. No matter how noble the intentions were, it has not worked.
Okay, thank you, sir. Let's move to Mr. Mbalula, and the question, sir, is the same, and I'll repeat it. Towards a prosperous and equal nation, your agenda for the future of South Africa, but you have history behind you, 30 years of it.
First, thank you very much. Let's start there with that history. When the ANC came into power in 1994, inherited an apartheid state, which in itself, that particular state was characterized by a debt challenge. And the ANC, when it came into power, wanted to reverse 300 and so years of apartheid mismanagement. In this particular instance, our people did not have houses. The education system was racially defined, and the economy was completely in tatters. With the economy faced with a debt trap, with the economy not attracting foreign direct investment, and totally an economy that was not just on the brink, completely collapsed, the ANC had to implement means of how to address this huge backlog that we are still redressing even today. First, in terms of that intervention, we implemented a document called the Reconstruction and Development Program. That document was like Father Christmas, where we said to our people, what do you need? They said, we need houses, we need better education, and all of that. And the question then became, where are you going to get financial capital to finance this demand of our people? And then we had to then implement a growth, employment, and redistribution strategy as a means of intervention, because we did not have this money, because all of it was swallowed by the apartheid debt. And in this particular instance, the expectation of our people grew, because we said to our people, we'll implement the RDP. Again, we were faced with a big challenge of the state-owned enterprises that were completely mismanaged and did not generate enough financial capital to finance what we call the backlog that we were faced with. We had to implement a program of restructuring of the state-owned enterprises, which then, for the first time, introduced the notion of the public-private partnership. And at that particular time, a big business and capital in this country did not come to the party. Drawing back to that and coming to this particular today, fast forward, you will find that there is bigger interest and commitment to work with government almost 30 years into our democracy, committing trillions of rands to want to work with the state to address these particular challenges. Hence the social compact we are talking about. Unfortunately, the social compact in the context labor, business, cannot be solicited and be finalized precisely because of points of difference in this regard. And hence government has opted for sectoral intervention, automobile industry in this particular instance, to address all the challenges that are faced by that particular sector. And you can give an example of that flourishing industry in the context of South Africa and AGOA, which is what we seek to preserve as a country in terms of that partnership with the United States of America. What we want to achieve in terms of our economy is decisively tackling the energy crisis and get rid of load shedding. and partly because of also the delayed intervention in the government intervention programs in relation to addressing load shedding. That has affected business and the rest of our country, and that is why it is primarily important for us to resolve that particular crisis. And I'm happy that we are moving somewhere in terms of addressing that particular challenge. And also support for small businesses and the township and rural economies is very important in terms of our agenda, and strengthen the capabilities of the state, local and provincial and national, and tackle corruption and crime.
Sure. 47 seconds. You managed to do it. I apologize for the background noise. I'm not too sure where it's coming from and whether it's intentional, intended to sabotage your presentation. I certainly hope not so. Was it soundtrack? He was delivering thunder. What do you say, Mr. Mbalula, to those who say the ANC appears unable to marry its economic interests to its foreign policy, viz. Our debacle with the US? You're looking at a situation where we recognize we are the largest partner of the US in terms of trade on the African continent. 600 American companies operate here. But at the same time, when we go on the political arena, we sing a different tune that antagonizes one of our biggest trading partners in the world, but perhaps the biggest if you then take the US and Europe as a bloc.
We are not antagonizing the United States of America in terms of trade. We are antagonizing the United States of America in terms of our policy, foreign policy, and the posture we take on different issues in the ever-evolving geopolitical environment. We are one in terms of trade. That is why AGOA was here. But the geopolitical environment, which is fluid, we may not find each other in terms of within the international forums, including the United Nations, because our government and ourselves as the ANC, we subscribe to a multilateral approach. We are against unilateralism, and we believe that the solution must be found within the UN. UN itself that must reform fundamentally, and to recognize and respect the sovereignty of nation states. We are not a sub-country to a bigger superpower. We are a nation state that must be respected. And our position on various issues, if you can ask me, you will realize that we are not just non-partisan, but we are on the side of peace. And this question that we have taken sides is far from the truth, because we have taken side on the side of peace. May it be Russia-Ukraine conflict, and we are on the side of justice and equality when it comes to the Palestinian and the Israeli conflict.
Can you answer the issue around those who say you have not made the progress expected in terms of uplifting the black majority out of poverty through inability to execute your policies and also through the inadequacy of some of your policies?
You have said that South Africa is ever-growing inequality as a country. And in terms of the policies that we have actually implemented, we seek to uplift our people and ensure that they too participate in the mainstream, may it be in an intervention in terms of the economy of black economic empowerment, and at the same time to address equality through ensuring that we implement policies like affirmative action. And that has been the policies of the ANC, to address, redress, but to narrow the gap in terms of inequality in our country.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mashaba, if I can come to you. The question is the same. Towards a prosperous and equal nation, the party's agenda for the future of South Africa, say. Your 5 minutes are starting.
No, thank you very much, Godfrey, and the audience. I think as a country, let's really focus on solutions. I think we can have debates around colonialism, apartheid, and 30 years of the failed government. I think South Africans are actually looking for solutions, and I think for us as Action SA, we're very clear and unapologetic around this particular direction that we've taken. The first order of business is to remove this current government, because for anybody to think, for anyone to think you can fix South Africa's problems with the people who have actually created the problem, we must be a mad nation. So the first order of business is to mobilize South Africans to democratically remove this government from power in 2024.
Okay, that's
the
great
first order of
addition.
business. That's the first order of business.
Thank you.
But then what happens once you remove the ANC out of government? Fortunate enough, Action SA has just come out of a policy conference from the 12th to the 14th of September, where we've taken very unpopular but pragmatic positions in terms of how we turn this country and the economy around. First of all, we need a criminal justice system that's going to work, free of political intervention, because unfortunately, if we see the level of deep-rooted corruption that exists in our country, there's just no way we're going to really succeed. I think it pains me as a South African to really see how our government has become so corrupt to the core. I thought, watching some of the countries in the past, I thought we've learned something, but South Africa today is one of the most corrupt governments in the world. So we need independent criminal justice system, create specialized units to deal with this corruption. But at the same time, we need to protect the lives of South Africans. We've got to really be unkind and be brutal against criminality, regardless of how small it is, so that the people must understand there are consequences in the event of non-compliance with the laws of our country. We need to deal with this draconian labor laws. I think the association of our government with the labor union, it's actually destroying the economy of this country. For us as Action SA, we are saying no labor union will have a veto right on our economic policy. We are unapologetic about this. We want a friendly business policy environment where businesses must be able to employ our people, or our people must be able to create businesses, because it's not government that creates jobs. Government's responsibility is to create a conducive environment. We can't live in a country with 42% unemployment, 12 million people are unemployed, and you have a communist as a minister of trade and industry. You must be a mad nation. So this kind of madness, those are things that we need to confront and confront directly. So we need entrepreneurs, black entrepreneurs, to operate without government intervention. It's not up to government to tell me how much I must pay. I mean, once you come out with such policies, you are doomed to fail. I don't need government to tell me as a businessman I must look after the people. Mr. Mbualula, with due respect, I've been an employer for almost 40 years. To look after people, I don't need you to pass laws to tell me I must look after people. I know how long it takes to train people and so forth. For me to really run a successful business, I know I need to really look after people. We need education. We cannot be in an environment where 80% of our public schools are dysfunctional because of ZANU, associated with this current government, destroying our education, where they decide who the principals of schools are. What we are saying as Action SA, we want one Department of Education. We need to, as government, we must decide who becomes principals of schools, working with the communities. No union is going to tell us who's the principal of a school. We as government, we will decide. We need to bring back school inspectors. We go into schools to make sure that our kids in the townships and the villages are given proper education, and we must invest in our education. You look at what happened just a few days ago with the Minister of Education, reducing investment in ECT centers when 80% of 10-year-olds can't read for learning. I mean, it's criminal. So basically, you're setting your nation up for failure. We need to do away with all race-based legislation, like broad-based black economic empowerment of his government. We need to come out with an inclusive, but at the same time, building a nation where South Africans can feel like all South Africans equal opportunities, but at the same time, we understand blacks are not poor because of their own making. Come out with our, what we call inclusive empowerment policy, where we must start a fund that must be run by professional people to make sure that when empowered, the people of Haramutsi, the village where I come from.
Thank you, sir. Right on target. Thank you. Thank you. 2 points I wanted to pick up with you. Does being friendly to business mean being anti-labor?
Well, I'm not a friend of labor unions because what they've done to our country, they've destroyed our economy, they've destroyed the potential of our people. But at the same time, I respect labor. Labor has got a crucial role to play in protecting their members. And that relationship and respect must be there. So as far as I'm concerned, labor, we will engage them, but they will never have a veto right on our economic policies. We are not going to have a minister coming from the labor union or from the Communist Party. You know, we will put in a business person, someone who understands a balance sheet, someone who understands that end of the month, someone who understands end of the month you've got to pay employees and you must pay your creditors. Not someone who comes out with ideological, honestly, stuff that has never worked anywhere in the world like what our friends in the ruling party are involved in. I think they use more ideology, and it has failed since 1917. I don't know when it will. How much longer must it take for them to understand that the policies being pursued by our government they've never worked and they will not work in the future. But what you'll do, yes, you'll have oligarchs, you'll have them with blue lights beating us up and being robbed by criminals. That's the kind of society you're going to create. You have highest unemployment rate in the world, murder rate, and so forth. And that's something that has got to stop. That's what I'm saying is the first order of business is to remove them from government in a democratic manner.
I wanted to go back to that first order of business and ask the question. So does then the need to remove the ANC, as you say, trump ideology, trump the attractiveness or the ability to be able to work with other political parties, i.e., even if I were, I'm going to put an extreme example here, if I were a criminal and I had been elected into parliament, you'd be willing to work with me to get rid of the ANC?
No, well, one thing, the reason why we as a Section SA, we find it difficult to entertain working with the ANC because unfortunately, if you look at the level of criminality within this organization, it's of concern to us. So, you know, I keep telling people I was born in abject poverty, and when you are raised in poverty, you are susceptible to get involved in criminality. Now you can imagine at my age and my financial standing, I must join a criminal organization. I mean, it's impossible to really consider. But I actually said the other day, and I would really like my friend Mr. Mbalula, if they would really like to really engage so that we can take this country forward, because it's important to take this country forward. One thing that we cannot deny, South Africa has entered the era of coalition, whether we like it or not.
Sure.
South African voters have really decided. But ANC, if they want to really engage, and that's something I said to them after the 2021 local government elections, let us commit on doing lifestyle audits. And I can tell you, I'm the first one in line to do a lifestyle audit. The results thereof must be mind blowing.
That door may be open to Luthuli House.
If they are happy, and I'm the first one to do a lifestyle audit. If they are prepared to do that, then we can start the negotiations. Secondly, if they are prepared to pass laws right now in
black economic empowerment. Let's call it.
Well, the thing is, how do you create economic prosperity when you are pitting South Africans against each other or one another? So what you need to do, build one united South Africa, encourage the private sector investment, but what you do, create a fund that must be run by professional people to ensure that people of Haramutsi, people of Soweto, my family in Soweto, and Mr. Mbalula's family in Bloemfontein, in the Free State, they are given equal opportunity to be able to get their business funded. They get the best education ever, and so forth. If you don't really do that, we continue with this triple B that is dividing us along racial lines. You create unnecessary bureaucracy that is not adding any value whatsoever. They are terrorists, actually, this unit. They come to us. They even want me, I must assign in front of the Commissioner of Oath, I must prove that I'm black. What kind of nonsense is this?
Okay, got you. So you tackling crime, you tackling did you say unions? You tackle the union power, and you do away with race-based legislation, as you put it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mbalula?
I think first we believe in inclusive growth, and to have inclusive growth, it means you've got to first address the challenges that come with impediment to inclusive growth in terms of the economy. And one of those, we need to pursue the social compact between the three partners, and that is what is important. And then secondly is to tackle the high rate of unemployment in the country. There's no issue about the role of the state. Any party that subscribes to the notion of the state subscribes to the rule of law. And our constitution, which Mashaba will inherit, speaks about it is pipe dream if he becomes.
Did you want to say may inherit?
Yeah, exactly. So
Sure.
already he's talking about the rule of law, because he can talk about weakened state institutions, but the rule of law for South Africa is our biggest guard. And as to continue to consolidate and strengthen and diversify the financial sector, as we do at the present moment, and there's greater collaboration. I mean, South Africa prides itself as one of the best banking system and financial sector in the world, the best banks, and this has not just come. I mean, it's like this myth that people think that treasury is a walkover. You cannot, even as a minister, walk over treasury, because what this country has created post-1994 in building the national treasury, it built a capacity that withstand generations to come. Even a minister cannot dictate what must happen to treasury. Myself, I was minister, I know this for a fact. So you've got a solid state. And where we are, we need to build these institutions. We have admitted as the ANC that we did veer away at some point, and we have admitted that. That is why we had the Zondo Commission, state capture, precisely because the state institutions were weakened. Where are we today? We are going back to the scorpions, because criminals have become too sophisticated in terms of their criminality, and they are emboldened. To talk about white-collar crime and all of that that is practiced in the private sector, too sophisticated for our law enforcement. We are going back there in terms of ensuring that the old scorpion model, which worked for us, is back and intact.
Yeah.
And in that way, you are strengthening the state response to criminality in the country.
Sure. Okay. I think I get it. I like the amount of time you spend on the rule of law and the need to restore it. I think us as ordinary people, we see it every single day. I don't know how many times you see the taxi driver going around and going the wrong side of the road, and then you see a civilian car also following and doing the same, because we have realized there are no consequences for breaking the law. absolutely right. The breakdown of rural land is an important one. Mr. Sinai.
Well, you asked for 3 key interventions that we
Yes.
would make in the first year of office of the new government. Firstly, would be to resolve the energy crisis by breaking the state monopoly on it, opening up electricity generation and supply to the private sector.
I thought it was done.
No, it hasn't been done. Eskom still has a monopoly on generation and supply. We'd roll out at a national level what we've done in the city of Cape Town and the province of the Western Cape, where we'd bring in the private sector, independent power producers, and provide feedback tariffs to encourage people to get off the grid and to then bring the private sector in. And that would be applied to all state-owned entities, ports, harbours, public-private partnerships, like have been done around the world with big companies, Dubai Ports World, Rotterdam Agency, and Thai agencies to be able to take over the ports so we can bring in efficiency. You cannot run an economy, particularly bringing export and import with ports that are congested as they are now. Secondly, we would cut all red tape that is holding back investment coming into South Africa, from the bizarre visa regime that locks out skilled and talented people from coming into the country, to ensuring that the millions of steps it requires to set up a small business are all removed. We need to unleash a nation of entrepreneurship, and they cannot do that at the moment because they are trussed up like a Christmas turkey with all of the red tape that this government puts in place. Thirdly, I would pass in the first year the end cadre deployment bill, which would ensure that we end cadre deployment. You cannot build a capable state while you have the policy of cadre deployment in place. It is what has undermined our state-owned entities. It's what's made our government departments inefficient. It's what has destroyed our economic advantages that we have. We need to have a capable civil service that is then capable of implementing the policies that you want. You will never have the rule of law if you don't have a capable national prosecuting authority free of deployed cadres. You will not have an efficient and effective operations in any government department if the people in those departments are there based on the party membership card in their pocket and not on the ability to be able to deliver to the people of South Africa.
But is it also not true that even in the established democracies, the people who are appointed into government, in part, while not per se party members, do subscribe actually to the ideology of the party that is in power?
I think you need to separate the two out. You have a public service, and you have
The politicians.
and you have politicians and political staff.
Yeah.
Of course, any mayor, any senator, any member of cabinet can bring in political staff. Their term of office is linked to the term of office of the minister concerned. They're not deployed into the full-time public service, and when the minister goes, they go. At the moment, what you have is a deployment of party loyalists into the public service. The civil servants are there to serve the party and not to build a capable state, capable of being able to deliver and expand.
I want to go back to power. I think I read, was it a couple of weeks ago, I think it's independent research suggesting that 66 gigawatts of power are in the pipeline as a result of the reforms that have been undertaken by the government. And that the reforms that have been undertaken by the end of next year will mean we won't be talking about load shedding nor what happened a few minutes ago.
Well, let me just say what happened a few minutes ago wouldn't happen in a DA-run municipality or in the Western
You can
Cape.
have the
So maybe you
system
should move your
breaking
Congress
down.
to the Western Cape and you won't have these problems. Let me tell you, in 2018, the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, who was Vice President at the time, told us that in 18 months to 2 years' time, you will forget the problems with load shedding and power ever existed. Well, we're now sitting in 2023, and the power situation is worse than it's ever been before. We've had these broken promises before, and things are not going to change. Don't be fooled by these superficial tinkering at the edges. You cannot take a donkey and train it to run the Durban July. Yeah, it can run. It's not going to win the race. And that's the problem. The model of state ownership and state monopoly is the wrong model to address the energy crisis in South Africa. And until we change that model, until we open up the industry, until we smash state monopolies that have now left us at the mercy of one destroyed energy generator and provider, we're going to end up in this problem. What you need to do is to do what we're doing in the Western Cape, is actively incentivizing people to be able to get off the grid, paying businesses that can feed back in and crediting them with the tariffs, being able to ensure that independent power producers are coming on. We are going ahead we're leaving the national government behind because we have to insulate the people who voted for us, at least, from the failures of national government. And when we get into power at a national level after the election next year, we're going to bring that model to the rest of the country. And within a year, we will be load shedding free.
But Mr. Tinaza, to be fair, it's not everyone who is able to take advantage of the incentives that you're talking about. If I am getting a 350 Rand grant, and that's all I have, surely, being able to take advantage of the reforms that you're talking about on the energy front is not a practical solution.
But what you can take advantage of is the lower electricity tariffs, because the city of Cape Town is able to produce its own electricity. The city of Cape Town would also shield you as a resident, as poor as you may be, of 2 full stages of load shedding. So while the rest of the country is on stage 2, whether you're on the SRD grant or whether you're a businessman, you are spared full stages of load shedding. That's what good, clean, accountable government that delivers means. And let me tell you, the biggest beneficiary of good, clean, accountable government is not the rich, it is the poor. People who have to rely on government hospitals. People have to rely on a state education system. People who can't afford private security companies and can only rely on the SAPS. Those are the people who benefit most from a government that's working for them and not against them.
I want to move on, and I want to talk about tackling the big crisis of South Africa, the lack of economic growth in this economy, and the resultant unemployment. And I want 2 specific measures that you are going to take when you get into government next year, or if you get into government next year, to jolt the economy so that we see a difference versus where we are at now. By the way, I forgot to add that Mr. Malema is unfortunately unable to join us, so he will not be participating in the debate, unfortunately. Hopefully, he will be able to join on another occasion. Mr. Mbalula, I'm going to start with you right in the middle. In terms of 2 interventionist policies to jolt the economy into higher growth.
First is to deal with the expansion and the support for the small, medium, macro enterprises in the economy, which has been the major drive of our government. And in this particular instance, you are addressing the inequality in terms of the economy, particularly those who have not been participating in the economy. And secondly is to strengthen the social compact, like I said, between labor and business, and ensure that the enabled environment that has been created by government and the state is actually been beneficial for making business for the country.
Is it not going to be a challenge for you to build that social compact, given the fact that I think this is year number, I think it's 1.5 now, since the president promised the compact, which was supposed to have been established, if I remember correctly, I think it was in May or thereabouts. And here we are, we still have not been able to build it. So if you are saying you're going to try to build a social compact that jolts the economy, wouldn't that take too long?
This government, for us, we are unlike Steernazen and Action SA. We are the incumbent. So when we talk about the social compact, business have agreed to some of and made some concessions which contradict with labor. And that is why we have developed and taken an approach of sectoral approach in terms of building social compact. Where we agree, we actually close the deal. And that is what we are doing at the present moment. So we build on that going forward without looking at this from a point of view of a holistic agreement of a social compact between government, labor, and business.
Mr. Mashaba?
Well, I think, to Godfrey, let me obviously go to the meat of this matter, and I go back to the question of the rule of law. I think I listened to Mr. Mbalula talking about South Africa having the best banking system. I think I just want to remind him, the human beings in our nature, we don't believe what people say, we believe what they do. Right now, our banking system has been compromised by his own president, who does not believe in our banking system. You know,
I'll let that one slide.
No, it's a fact. This matter of South Africa is grey listed right now, and in the meantime, we bring in the US dollars, we put them under mattresses instead of, and you are telling us our banking system is the best in the world, when the president himself does not believe in it. So I think we are not fools to that level. So we need the rule of law. And the leadership of a country has to be ethical and be the one that society can look up to. We need to deal with the labor legislation. We need to distance government from labor unions so that we can encourage private sector investments in our country. For as long as we allow this relationship of the so-called tripartite alliance, and we have a minister of labor, of trade and industry as a communist, we've got big problems. So we need to get a minister of labor to be someone who understands what business is all about. That end of the month, for you to make to be able to be an employer, you must create a brick and mortar, employ people, pay them at the end of the month, and look after them. So labor legislation really very key. And ANC, the current government, is not going to be that government because they cannot afford to separate themselves from the trade union organization. They are actually connected to the core. So unfortunately, they are not the ones who are going to sort out this mess. It is for that reason I'm saying is the first order of business, if we are serious as South Africans, particularly us as black people, because we are a majority, anyone who's going to be in government in this country will be in government on the mandate of us as black people. And I'm calling on us as black people. These guys have failed us for 30 years. We've got to remove them and put in a new government, and we don't have to wait for 30 years before we remove another government out of power.
Another intervention?
Well, you said you wanted two. I've given you two. You want more? I can give you more.
Okay, no. I think I missed your second one.
We needed
labor and then the rule of law. Okay,
yes, I can give you another one. That we need a small government, maximum of 20 ministers. We don't need a single deputy minister. Government is not an employment agency.
Your cabinet will have 20 ministers.
Maximum, no single deputy minister, so that we can take this money to go and rebuild the railway network, public transport system that they've destroyed. We subsidize public transport system so that our people must be able to move around and be able to really go to work.
Sure. Mr. Sinaza?
I'll start by reforming the labor legislation. We've got a labor regime at the moment that caters for the type of economy we would like to have, but not the economy that we have. We're a developing...
Just explain.
Well, we've got labor legislation that would fit very well in an advanced
like
developed country, but not suited to our local environment. What we need to do is to get more people into work and to incentivize job creation. The current labor legislation makes it incredibly difficult to hire, to fire, to grow your labor force, and the red tape that's coming down the road now with race-based quotas and the like are only going to make that even harder for people to employ others into the business. So we've got to have a labor regime that is suitable for attracting the high labor intensity type of jobs that we need in the country. We've got a very low skills base as a result of 30 years of a failed education system has left our young people without skills, and we need large labor-intensive manufacturing enterprises to come here. They're not going to come here when we've got a labor regime that is often more onerous than in many developed countries. Okay. The second thing that I would do is reduce the size of the state, not just the cabinet, reduce the size of the state. We have one of the largest cabinets in the world, and we spend a great deal of money on politicians and protecting and housing and ferrying them around, where that money should be being spent on the people. But the size of the state is also a problem. The percentage of the civil service and the cost of the civil service as a percentage of GDP is way out of kilter with the international norms. And so some tough decisions are going to be happening.
What sort of ratio would you see?
Well, it shouldn't be above 32 to 35%, and at the maximum. We sit, I think, somewhere up in the high 60s.
So you would halve that?
Well, you'd need to look at, over time, reducing the size of the civil service.
Is that people in the streets?
No,
i.e. those people living in the state, jobless?
Well, the problem is that you take Eskom, for example.
You have to take
You've got
action.
14,000 employees excess at Eskom. So you're essentially paying 14,000 people in Eskom that you don't need there. And what are they doing? Are they bringing new enterprise to Eskom? Are they breathing new life into Eskom? Are they putting energy in the grid? No, we're paying huge amounts of salary. There are 55,000 civil servants who earn over R1 million a month. That is a huge strain on a fiscus and an economy that is barely struggling to survive. We've got to spend more money on the people and less money on the politicians, and that is are the two big interventions I'd make.
Yeah, I'm going to open the floor so you guys can also have an opportunity to ask our politicians here issues at the close of your heart. But I still have a couple of more points I need to go through. We have a room full of business people here, investors. I haven't heard one political party say, at least the opposition. I think from Mr. Mbalula, I can understand the government is pursuing, the policy has been pursuing, and it has seen the results it has because it's got its considerations and it's using the monies the way it sees fit. But I'm just surprised I didn't hear anyone say, I'm going to halve the corporate tax rate. So I am able to attract capital into this country, into sectors where it is required. You said you're making it easier for investors to invest, but I haven't heard anything like that, Mr. Steenhuisen.
Well, I think you'd have to look very, very carefully at the budget. I mean, we have a severely constrained fiscal environment, and I think it would be populist just to announce that I'm going to halve corporate tax.
You agree with the ANC?
No, I'm saying it'd be populist to sit on this podium and make an announcement I'm going to cut corporate tax.
No, not populist. Remember, I'm saying you are attracting these guys.
Yes, but I'm saying to you there are consequences for that.
Sure.
We already have a budget that is severely constrained. Does that mean when you cut half that corporate tax rate, does that mean it's going to crowd out some of the social spend that we need to get our hospitals working, to get our clinics up and running, to equip and train the South African Police Service so that we can fix the very, very key areas that are constraining business here? I'm sure that many of the business people in this room would be happy to keep paying the tax at the rate they are, provided they had water in their businesses, provided they had electricity running there, provided they had a government that was right-sized and being able to deliver services efficiently and effectively, and a government that wasn't stealing money from them every single day. I think that we need to look very, very carefully at how we balance the budget, but until you get those key levers right, to get those key drivers of economic right, I think you've got to be very careful about it. But where we have been clear, and it's a point I tackled the President on in the House last week, and which we've been clear on, there should be no new taxes in South Africa at all. Anything that is done by government should be tax neutral, because business and the private sector cannot bear any further burden than they are carrying already.
Okay, Mr. Balula? Would you change anything?
No.
No.
Yes. Because I think the most important thing is to strike the balance in terms of what we want to achieve in relation to the priorities of the country, and which at the present moment we need to resolve the problem of load shedding, which is key in terms of what we want to do and to allow, which affect flourishing of business in the country. And then we have dealt with the issues of the exchange controls over a period of time, and in order to attract foreign direct investment in the country. And we need to find a balance between the disagreements between labor and business in the country, so as to strike a balance to enable the social compact to flourish.
Sure. Mr. Mashaba?
You know, one of the elephants in the room in South Africa that for years we were silenced to discuss, and I think fortunate enough, 1st of December 2016, I was brave enough to tackle this. I think one of the impediments of economic growth in this country is this open border policy, where people think South Africa is not a sovereign country, that anyone can come in and without having documentation. We need control of our borders. South Africa was built at the back of migrants, and I think I want to emphasize that. And the only way we can grow this economy is to attract people of the world to come here. We've got the most beautiful country, but we want people to come here legally, and when they're in South Africa, they must respect our laws. I don't want to live in a country where there's one undocumented person. I don't want to live in a country like that. What happens when someone comes into this country, they must be, for whatever reason, they must come here legally. If they run away from the Mugabes of this world, let us protect them.
Just
Let's
to point out,
immediately document them so that we know who's in our country.
Just to point out that Ms. Mbalula would probably say, I think the ANC subscribed to the same notion as seen by the enactment of the new border agency now as a tool to try to control the illegal entry of people into the
political
country.
platitudes. They're not serious about this. They're just playing games.
Okay,
they're just playing games with South Africans because they're the ones, they create a problem and then they tell us they can solve it. They are not serious about solving this problem. They created it deliberately. How do you allow the billions of goods to come into this country every single day? Counterfeit goods, expired goods that come into this country, allow international drug syndicates to come and destroy our youth and our families. They know about this, and they know the people behind this. And as long as we allow this level of chaos to be the order of the day, forget about economic progress of our country.
Okay. All right. I've just been advised that the basis of the debate was on agreed topics of discussion. And so I'll have to retract my offer of a Q&A. I hope you'll allow me to continue asking the questions, and I hope I ask all the questions that you wanted to raise. Perhaps on another platform, you can engage me, and I'll ask them in my private capacity. I know all of them. Let's tackle elections 2024. And I want to tackle elections 2024 from two perspectives. Number one, I want to talk about what you are expecting in 2024 in terms of your performance. And then secondly, we have to tackle the issue of the coalitions, because it's going to be the story of 2024, right? So let me begin with you, Mr. Mashaba.
Well, look, one thing, as I've already indicated, whether anybody likes it or not, South Africa has entered an era of coalition. I cannot really see anyone achieving outright majority. But obviously for us as Action SA, we're campaigning for a kill. We want to get outright majority. Is it realistic? Honestly, I think I need to really be fair to myself. I don't want to come out with spin that I'm going to be disappointed. It is for that reason we are in talks with other political parties in our multi-party charter. In the event that we don't get outright majority, we can then know that we've got better devils to work with. Because when you go into a coalition, you don't go into a coalition because you agree on everything. Coalition is about compromise. And I think for us as Action SA, we are committed to this the notion of working with other political parties, as long as at the end of the day there's mutual respect and we put South Africans first ahead of anything else. And we leave our egos
What would be the mechanics of constructing that coalition?
It's really,
is it representation?
For us as Action SA, political parties that must work with us, we must agree that we believe in a non-racial society. So if you are looking for a racial party, Action SA is not your party. We believe in a non-racial South Africa. We believe in a free market economy. We believe we must run government the way we are going to be the facilitators of economic growth, allowing the private sector to be the player. Corruption has got to be public enemy number one. There must be consequences for wrongdoing, particularly starting with the leadership. There has to really be accountability. That's, if you look at the agreement we signed as part of the multi-party charter, it's a commitment to do lifestyle audit. Lifestyle audits of anyone who wants to work in our government. And I'm volunteering in the event South Africans decide to really put us into government. I'll be the first one get independent body to do lifestyle audits of anyone and everyone who's going to really be working with us. Because at the end of the day, coalition arrangements are electoral results, not something that I would want. If I have my choice, I would want to really have outright majority.
Yeah.
Is it achievable? I think for right now, I've not smoked anything in a long time. The last time I had something, the last time I remember smoking something was in Matric in 1978. You know.
Okay, I think that's it, as candid as an answer as I could have hoped for. In terms of who is senior in terms of that coalition, do you have any preconditions at all? I.e., is it a question of perhaps looking at the leadership that you have in that coalition and deciding it's not just about votes, it's also about the stage of the person and that kind of thing? I'm just trying to understand who would take charge of that coalition and on what kind of conditions.
Look, I think we need to be very careful in jumping the bridge before we get to it. Right now, in terms of giving the commitment to South Africa, we have this the multi-party charter, which SNSA is committed to. But when we go out and campaign between now and the election, we are going to contest the Section SA with our clear policies, which are here for anyone to really see. But obviously, as a multi-party charter, we are obviously right now, our technical policy teams are getting together to actually look at the common policies so that if there's any disagreement, you must obviously sort those issues out now. Who's going to be the leader? Let's discuss that matter after the election.
When we get there.
Because right now, we don't know who's going to emerge as the biggest political party.
I was trying to rule out the Johannesburg syndrome of the one-seat mayor that we have. But yeah, I think you have tried to answer me in part. All right, Mr. Steenhuisen, I'll go to Mr. Incumbent last because he's in a different position in terms of building that coalition.
So what we've done with the multi-party charter is essentially establish a pre-election pact of parties that have committed around a common set of values and principles: non-racialism, respect for the rule of law and the Constitution, a social market economy that treats business and the private sector as partners in the growth agenda, and a zero tolerance for cadre deployment and corruption. And those values and principles are the basis of the charter. And that charter will lead, we hope, to a coalition after the election. You obviously can't form a coalition now because you don't know what the results are. So it's a very similar model to the one used by Donald Tusk successfully in Poland in the last month, where what you do is you are able to sort out all of the issues, come together on common policies, a common program of action ahead of the election, because we learned some strong lessons from the local government sphere where you go into an election with no plan and then you've got 14 days to try and put together a government. So we hope that by the time the election rolls around, we will have a very, very clear path about what could happen. Now, the collective parties in the charter have around 36% of the vote already in the current political environment. That's just 16% away from a majority. And we believe there's huge opportunity amongst the 14 million South Africans who are registered to vote but have sat out the last two elections, and the 13.8 million South Africans, mainly young people, are not registered to vote. If we can just crack into 10% of each of those markets, we'll be able to get over the finish line and usher in a new era that can start to rescue South Africa. And I think that what it has done is ensured that we have a front loading of the plans and abilities, so that when we get into government and we are that 14-day period where you've got to elect a speaker and a president, we will know exactly what to do. And then when we get into government, we will know how to start implementing what the focus areas will be and how we can start the project of turning things around. I'm very glad you mentioned Joburg, because I want to make one point, if I may. Because there are some here, and I'm sure some in the commentariat, who see coalitions through the lens of the Johannesburg situation only. And the Johannesburg situation in Gauteng is relatively unique in that regard. There are 18 parties in Johannesburg City Council. 11 of the 18 got less than 1% of the vote. Half of that 11 got less than 0.5% of the vote. Frankly, it is virtually impossible to form a coalition in Johannesburg that's going to have the stability that's required. But people mustn't throw the coalition baby out with the Johannesburg bathwater, because we're involved in 27 coalitions around the country. We're in different configurations with different parties. And they bring good, clean, accountable, stable government to places as diverse as Richards Bay in KwaZulu-Natal and Saldanha Bay in the Western Cape. They don't make the news because they're getting on with the business of delivering good, clean, accountable government. Every political system that is a proportional system will end up in a coalition, and South Africa has now reached that point. For the first time in 75 years, we will have an election where no party emerges with its own majority.
May.
And so coalitions, no, it will.
May.
No, it will. Show me one poll, one independent poll, one analysis that has the ANC over 50%. Even their own internal polling has them well below 50%.
I've also
so the
seen-
opportunity is there.
Yeah.
If we work together and unite,
Yeah.
we can put in place a new government and we can start to rescue South Africa.
I could also point to polls in the past where I think the death of the ANC was pretty much announced.
Well, we're not talking
and it
about the
didn't
death of
happen.
the ANC.
But anyway, I think let's concentrate on the other 2 points that you raised. And I wanted to know, in terms of constructing that coalition, whether, to what extent raw numbers play a part in terms of the influence of political parties in building the people who will be in that coalition.
Well, obviously, what you want to do is to make sure that you can build a stable coalition. And that means that there must be a high degree of trust with the parties, and that you must have a common value set and a common set of principles.
Yeah.
We learnt the hard way in 2016 by dealing with a party that doesn't share our values and principles, and it has a very diametrically opposed view to whether the state should control things or not, whether we should have private land ownership or not, whether corruption and cadre deployment are a thing that's all right or not.
Yeah.
And a coalition that is based on a lack of trust and a lack of core values and principles and does not have a comprehensive coalition agreement is going to set itself up to failure. That is why the multi-party charter of parties, 8 parties now, are working very, very hard to come up with these common policy positions so that we can go to the electorate in this next election saying, not to vote against the ANC, but to vote for something positive, future-focused, that can rescue the country.
Yeah. I think these people want to play music are very insistent.
I think they're agreeing. I think it was a crescendo crescendo for my speech.
Very quick follow-up question. I wanted to understand that if the name of my party is Soweto Party, I turn out to be a better leader than you, will you make me president?
Well, that's very clearly contained in the multi-party charter agreement. We've said very clearly, and I've been upfront from the moment I announced the Moonshot Pact to what has now become the multi-party charter. I said, this isn't an elect John Steenhuisen or DA for president. I said, let's get round the table, let's use this unique opportunity that history has now provided us with a path to victory for the first time. And when we sit round the table after the election and say, well, who is best placed to be a presidential candidate, maybe even before the election, who can really be a game changer, who's going to bring in votes, we must find the best person who can achieve all of those things. It doesn't necessarily have to be from the largest
Final question to you on this round. Is the ANC out?
Well, of course they are, because we're not going to change anything by keeping the same guys there. And you know what? I think it'll be very, very good for the ANC to spend some time on the opposition benches. It is a natural ebb and flow in politics. Parties come, they spend time in government, 10 to 15 years, they're out. It's been an unnaturally long stay for the ANC, and I think it'll be an opportunity to revive and renew themselves. So I actually want to help the ANC to do that by making sure we get them onto the opposition benches so that we can. Our focus is on the multi-party charter, getting the parties that Herman and I have spoken about and have been working with over that finish line. That has to be our core focus to save South Africa.
Mr. Mbalula?
Thank you very much.
I saved you for last because the last time I asked the question, I was told the ANC is not campaigning to lose an election.
Yes, that's correct. I happened to be at the helm of ANC campaign for 3 decades. And I see the difficulties now. And I think we have seen worse than this as a party. But every election is not a given. And I think the opposition failed to obliterate the ANC when they had an opportunity to do so in the last election.
Which one's the
local government?
The local government election.
Yeah, they failed dismally. I mean, even the DA went down further. I'm saying you failed to obliterate the ANC where you had an opportunity. And why?
Okay.
Ukuthi ngesixhosa mhlonishwa ibivelile nilahlile. Ibilahlile, I don't know how to explain
To
to
translate
you.
it.
Yeah, ibivelile. So,
I wish I
and then even when with that opportunity, the opposition, of course, Mashaba came in and bolstered you a little bit, and but you could not obliterate the ANC.
when it was on the ground.
Yeah, when it was on the ground, because our people did not come out in their numbers to vote, and they did not go to the opposition. And you had your base energized, and your base came out in numbers to vote. I'm certain it will happen even in this election, that your base will come out in numbers because you have energized them with this belief that here is an opportunity that the ANC will be gone. And I think that's, if you are basing that on the past election, of which many do, I think it is really incorrect. Let me tell you, the ANC will be out of power because of itself, because of how it organizes itself internally. The ANC will be out of power if it fails to energize its support base. I think the ANC will be out of power. If the ANC address the two, the ANC will not. The poll is a fair reflection of the mood in the country. We are energized now by the Springboks, but our problems remain the same. Our people don't have electricity in Soweto and many other areas. I went there with the president. They said, President, we were not connected for more than 6 years into the grid. You brought us electricity. From there it collapsed. And why it collapsed? We are connected, we've got transformers, we've got illegal connections, collapsed our connectivity to the grid. And then you talk about load shedding, we don't know load shedding. It's always dark here. So we are therefore not going to vote because we are not connected. We've got the Springboks and everything. We celebrate, but we have not seen them. We see everybody celebrating because we are forever in the dark. So I'm saying, John, all of those things addressed and our people energized, the ANC will not be out of power. What will happen to coalitions in the country? Coalitions is a reflection of the will of the people. If it happens in 2024 that the will of the people pushes the ANC below 50 and it is forced to negotiate or engage with anyone, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Coalitions have not worked for this country. At least we convened a summit to focus on this matter. Smaller political parties push it against us, the bigger parties, to say, no, we don't need this. You know that coalitions, you can be in 27, have not worked for this country. You've got a mayor in Johannesburg that you don't want. Do we want that mayor? We don't have a choice. We've got a mayor elsewhere and elsewhere. And then do we want that mayor? We don't have a choice. We are not given a choice as the majority party to select the mayor we want to continue with our developmental agenda. So, you know at local government as it stands at the present moment that coalitions have not worked for South Africa. So why would South Africans allow coalitions at national government to continue? And I think that is what is in the mind of our people. And what is in the mind of our people is incumbency. What is my party doing for me and all of that? And I think all political parties, I'm not an analyst, but the way I look at them, I don't think they bring something new. I think they regurgitate and they critique the ANC. And then it was even very difficult for me to say anything in this platform because anything is a reduction of what the ANC policy is and what I will do as an alternative or a balancing act. There is nothing outright. I like Mashaba, he's very brave. He says what he likes, which is very dangerous for him because it will not win him votes because first we now know that he's a man of free market fundamentalism and he will not retreat on that. Two, he hates trade unions and then he hates any form of a trade union and labor in the country, doesn't believe even in labor reforms or anything of that sort. And then he doesn't believe in BEE. All of what we started in this country in 1994, according to him, must start afresh with something new. Now, the ANC has produced a big black middle strata in this country, who some of them don't associate themselves with us, even though they are a product of our policy. But those support Mashaba in their numbers. And in this particular instance, the ANC, in terms of getting into a coalition, there's no possibility of that in this election. I don't see it coming. I think the ANC will still emerge. It's not a given. We've got to work hard for it. And the opposition is keeping us on our toes. And the ANC have always subscribed to the notion of unity for the country. And as I conclude, because we have brought in our government, even when we are in power and majority opposition, even in the opposition benches, we've brought the Freedom Front Plus. We have brought good now into the executive. We are not greedy with power, can work with anybody. We worked with them in the Western Cape when we lost power. We worked with the IFP in KwaZulu-Natal for the longest of time. We had a stable coalition, even in the Western Cape, at the provincial level. But I'm saying coalition is a reflection of the will of the people.
Sure.
And that's it. So I wish to leave it there. But we are working for outright majority, which I believe the ANC will get.
What is outright, Mr. Mbalula? Is that 55?
We have never quantified that into numbers.
50 plus 1.
Yeah, outright majority is the majority that gives us a right to form government.
Okay.
And to do what we are able to do so that we don't share power with Mashaba, who's going to tell us that do away with COSATU.
If the worst were to happen, what would be the principles that will guide you in forming a coalition?
First, it will be an undertaking to an undertaking. Coalitions normally are not formed on the basis of ideology alone. They are not. Anyone who tells you that, even Mashaba will change. And then if we happen to be in a coalition and we need the partner, this thing of him of saying that, no, with the ANC, I want the following conditions is better than saying, I will never work with them. In a coalition, you don't only deal with ideology. You get into coalition with the aim of people who want to govern the country and have got the interest of the people at heart.
Sure.
To recognize that I serve a constituency in this coalition and these are my interests, you come with this. People don't eat ideology at the end of the day. They eat service delivery, what you are able to do, and they want stability. That's what they need.
Yep.
So the reason we're able to work with them in the Western Cape and KwaZulu-Natal is not on the basis that we have the same ideology or whatever. We work together because we had to accept, first and foremost, that this is the will of the people. And that is why we worked together.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got 2 more points that I want us to explore. The first one is a bit sensitive because there is a war that is going on. And we know passions have been extremely high because people have taken certain stances towards this. This is the question on international relations and South Africa's role in it. The second point that I want us to explore last is the issue of a national interest. Does South Africa have a national interest. What does a national interest mean for the political leaders we have on our panel? So I'll start first of all on the international question. South Africa's role on the international scene. Mr. Mashaba.
Well, I think our foreign policies must be actually informed by what is actually good for South Africa and our international partners. So it cannot just really be a one-way stream, and we have to really look at respect for human rights. We as Section SA are not going to be associated with governments that does not really respect democracy and respect human rights, and don't really believe in free market economy and so forth. So it has to really be a win-win situation for both parties. I think South Africa, looking at it right now, one thing that we debated at length at our policy conference, our view is that South Africa has got too much representation internationally. I think, honestly, we don't need half of the countries to have embassies in those countries. I mean, we can have one ambassador serving 5 countries or so, instead of every time someone commits corruption here, we can open an embassy somewhere else and hide that person there. You know, we cannot operate in that fashion because it's expensive to really have all these embassies. So our international relationship is going to really be based off what is good for South Africa, and ensure that these countries respect the rule of law. We will not be associated with dictators and with countries that actually does not respect the human rights of their own countries. Not that we will interfere directly in their affairs, but we will make it really very clear. Like, I can give an example that I always use. It's ZANU PF in Zimbabwe. I mean, it's going to be almost impossible, not difficult for Action SA to have relationships with ZANU PF. Looking at their history, you know, making Zimbabweans to be all over the world, including being here in South Africa, creating a massive challenge for us as South Africa. Zimbabwean people deserve to be in their own country. They've got a beautiful country, lots of potential. But unfortunately, when you have a party like the ZANU PF, which are friends of the ANC, I really find it difficult for a current government to be associated with the ZANU PF. I mean, it's beyond imagination, you know. But those are things that will inform our diplomatic relations.
Would you have a mission in China?
Absolutely. China, it's really very important. We will respect it. But I doubt if we'll have a mission in Russia. I doubt. If I have my choice, but at the end of the day, those issues will be looked into, and, you know, because if we look at the history of the Russians, unfortunately, leaves a lot to really be desired. But we'll take that decision once we're in government. Actually, that's the reason why at the policy conference we've taken a decision, and it's part of this document, to say, look, we will remain at the moment, from a policy point of view, we will respect all the membership that the current government is into. But once we get into government, we must immediately get experts to really look at this relationship. Those that are not serving the interest of South Africa, we will obviously, I think, terminate our relationship. But at this point in time, we will respect the current membership relationships in place.
Mr. Balula?
National interest is about South Africanness and not elevating one group to the exclusion of the other, and then understanding that we owe our being to this country. We come from a history of colonialism, which we call it a colonialism of a special time, where the colonized and the colonizer became inhabitants. That's why we never subscribe to a racist notion that a particular race within our country must go back or go to the sea. We are a non-racial party, and we espouse that in our foreign policy. And at the same time, we believe in multilateralism and the international law. We believe that multilateralism is supreme. Nations and countries subscribe through multilateralism to preempt any possibility of war anywhere in the world. We don't subscribe to unipolar. We subscribe to the emerging multipolarism in the world and the building of regional blocs like BRICS and strengthening of regional blocs like SADC for continuity and economic development. We subscribe to peace and justice for all. We are born out of that when nations of the world came together to support us to be free from apartheid. Our approach to Ukraine conflict is guided by the international law, but at the same time, it's not just non-partisan, is a position of taking a stance in relation to what is happening there. That's one. Our position on Palestine is informed by peace and justice and self-determination of people of the world. The Western Sahara, Sahrawi people, their self-determination must be guaranteed. The Palestinian people, their self-determination as oppressed people must be guaranteed. And we are not against the Jews. We've got Jews inside the ANC and who have been at the helm of the leadership of our movement. What we are against is oppression. What we are against is non-independence of the Palestinian people. We'll never sell out on that, come what may. We believe that the Palestinian state must be guaranteed, and they, alongside the Israeli state, we subscribe to the notion of the two-state solution and building of bridges of dialogue between the two. We don't believe in extremism and violence and attacking people one way or the other in the name of dealing with extremists. So the international law in this regard must prevail for those. So it guides us, this position, in various conflicts that erupt anywhere else in the world, as a country, but at the same time as a party. We don't subscribe to the notion that one state can be a policeman of other states. We don't subscribe to unipolarism, that one state can rule over others economically forever. And that is why we have slotted ourselves in these regional economic developments and blocks in the world like BRICS, which others don't like. It is important for our own sovereignty as a country. So national interests are guaranteed in the understanding that we are a nation, a very special one, diverse as we are, which is our strength, and we don't give up on that. Even when others say this is a myth, is fake, and all of that, we understand where we come from as a people. That's why we celebrate the Springboks.
Okay. Thank you very much. I see you've married the national interest together with the international perspective position. Mr. Mashaba, I'll come back to you so you're talking about your international perspective as well. Mr. Steenhuisen?
Well, I think that the national interest, I mean, everything that's been spoken about so far is frankly national attributes. I think the national interest of South Africa is to get an economy that's growing so that we can lift people out of poverty and into jobs. It's not in our national interest to have the social fabric of our country put in such peril with the fact that the majority of our citizens don't have work and the majority of our young people don't have work. I don't think it's in the national interest that we have 30 million people living below the poverty line. And so if we're going to put the national interest first, we've got to look to those areas of the world where our interests lie, where jobs can come from, where economic investment comes from. And I made the point earlier that 75% of all foreign direct investment into South Africa comes from the European Union, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America. If we were to lose or turn our back on our trading partners and people who are invested in our economy, I think that we're going to imperil jobs. We're going to imperil our economy even more than it is currently imperiled. And I think that that is not in the national interest of South Africa to do so. And I think there is a problem with our alignment. There's no problem being a part of BRICS, but there is a big problem when you have situations where, on the night of the invasion of Russia into Ukraine, the Minister of Defense was at the Russian embassy raising a glass of champagne to the Russian military services. I don't think it is right in the midst of a war to be conducting war games with one side in the war. Just as I don't think it's right in the midst of a huge humanitarian blowout in the Middle East for our foreign minister to be on the phone to Hamas. I don't think that is right. And I think it sets an alignment away from where we need to be. The reality is that we are in competition with most of the BRICS countries for the sale of strategic minerals and other assets. We are in trade agreements with preferential access to markets. I don't know of a single bilateral trade agreement between South Africa and a single BRICS country. Yet we have a very preferential bilateral trade agreement with the European Union. We have a bilateral trade agreement with the United Kingdom, and we have a GOA with the United States of America. Now, as it relates to our foreign policy,
So maybe before you go to foreign policy, I just wanted to follow up on that and say, well, in markets we would say, okay, so that's historical, but where is the growth going to come from? Because while these relations are important, I think numbers, whether you are listening to the IMF or from the World Bank or from other economies, the growth is going to come from the East. Doesn't it then make sense, without alienating your current partners, to court new partners?
Of course, and so I said, there's no problem with us being involved in BRICS, but we must understand that we compete with Russia, with many of the other countries, and therefore for the sale of strategic minerals and resources. And that the real opportunities lie for us in expanding current trade agreements. Of course, we've got to always seek out new markets, and that's the point I was going to get to next.
Okay.
Our foreign policy must be rooted in upholding and taking to the world the values that are enshrined in our Constitution. And we must be consistent about that. It's no good standing up, jumping and screaming about what's happening in the Middle East, and you're absolutely silent, as our government is, on what's happened in Darfur in the last week. It's no good jumping up and down about sovereignty and respect for international law when you've essentially sat on the fence while Russia has decimated the territorial integrity of Ukraine. So you need to be consistent in these things. Coming back to the point about national interest, and I would be loath to shut down consulates and embassies around the world. I think the message that it sends to those countries, I think, would be unfortunate. What would I ever do, given the fact that our national interest is growing our economy and creating jobs, lifting people out of poverty and into opportunity, I would transform each and every one of those missions into trade missions, with the sole focus to go out there and seek new access to markets, seek a market for South African products, and to then use it. I was astounded. 2 months ago, I traveled to Washington to go and argue for our ability to stay in AGOA, because AGOA is so important. And given the fact where our government had positioned ourselves, it was very worrying that we were putting that relationship at risk, certainly at a congressional and Senate level. I was astounded being on Capitol Hill, interacting with senators and congressmen, interacting with the key decision makers, that not a single outreach had been made from the South African embassy in Washington. Not a single one. Hardly any of them could name who the ambassador even was. Now, if we want to be able to...
But wouldn't it be true also that the ministers had actually gone to Washington
No, this
previously?
was after. No, this was after.
Are you talking about the embassy?
Yes, the embassy. Surely a key strategic relationship with one of our major trading partners requires an embassy and an ambassador that is absolutely connected with ensuring that relationship and a very beneficial, for both sides, agreement like AGOA is protected and defended. I cannot believe that an embassy would be sitting back on its hands watching this car crash unfolding in front of it.
The unfortunate part is that because we haven't heard from the embassy, so obviously they can't defend themselves. So it puts me in a difficult position. If
Well,
I
I'm just telling you the factual experience that I had when I was in Washington, and I think that the fact that we had to send ministers over to go and deal with it is a very good indication, actually, that the mission there was not up to speed and what it should have been
Finish
doing.
your thoughts, yeah.
Yeah. So I would turn our embassies and missions around the world into trade hunters, to market access hunters, and to investment hunters. How can we land your businesses and your factories into the South African environment, and marketing and selling South Africa as a premium investment destination? And I think that would deal with both those questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Mashaba, you want to come in on the international relations aspect of it, South Africa's position in the world?
Yeah, well, I think, Godfrey and South Africans, something that the ANC gets confused is national interest and ANC interest. There's a huge difference, So if you look at their international relations, it's actually based more on ANC interest, not South Africa's interest. That's why you see them with relationship with countries that don't really add value to our country. We sit in a country where we've got over 1 trillion factories. The Babelegi industrial area in Amanskraal where I was born. We should really be having teams going to the US because US right now with China, there's some issues. Let's give them those factories in Babelegi, in Garangua, where I started business in 1985. We're sitting with 12 million of our people who are unemployed, and the Americans are looking for investment opportunities. The Germans, we can give them those factories for nothing. We give them massive tax incentives for them to reopen those factories, re-employ people of Amanskraal, people of Kwakwa, people of other areas, so that people can have dignity. The thing is, people must understand, job opportunities is not about really earning money. It's about having the dignity. Right now, our people are expected to live on 350 rands a month. When we've got factories that are closed, we've got an international community, including South African businesses, with trillions of money in their balance sheet. They're too scared to invest in this country because the environment is not conducive. As I said, you've got labor laws, you've got discriminatory laws, you have high levels of crime and so forth. I mean, earlier on, I was just talking to one woman who's in the construction industry, a young woman, I believe she'll be speaking tomorrow, where there's construction mafia out stopping her projects from time to time. No support whatsoever from government. I mean, how do you allow such an environment? Our own people, our own people are being stopped, and our government can tell us they are not aware of this construction mafia. They're the ones who created them. Those people must be put in jail for a long time. Because it's sabotage. It's actually, honestly, it's treason what these people are doing. Why our government is allowing this to happen? Unfortunately, it can only happen at the expense of our country. Sure. Look at our relationship with Cuba. We've got our own doctors unemployed in this country. We bring in doctors from Cuba, engineers from Cuba to come and fix our water problems. I don't know if you've been to Cuba in Havana.
No, I haven't.
Please go there. South Africa, actually, we must send engineers to Cuba to go and help them with water. Why ANC takes this decision to bring Cuban engineers? I'm telling you, just go at the harbor in Cuba. South Africa, we've got engineers. We should be sending, if they love Cuba that much, send the South African engineers to go and help sort out the water problems. So that's why the ANC is mixing ANC interest and national interest.
Okay. All right. I think we have exhausted all our points, and I really appreciate your candidness in answering those questions. But I'm going to give you one final chance, and we will go around the list to sum up your thoughts. You are speaking here to a room full of business people. I would like you to address them and tell them what you are going to do next year should you return to power. I'm repeating in part my question, but I think there's the benefit of you concentrating your thoughts and saying to these business people, this is what we will do, this is what we'll represent when we come back into power next year, or if we do come back into power next year. I'll give you time to drink your water and start with Mr. Neisen here and then go down the line.
The thing is, I don't need to tell you what we're going to do. I can show you what we've already done where people have trusted us with their votes, and that is the DA-run Western Cape, which was responsible for over 98% of all net new jobs in the last 3 quarters in South Africa. An economy, the only provincial economy that's growing, economy that's becoming energy resilient.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify. Did you say 98% of all new jobs in South Africa?
In the DA-run Western Cape. 360,000 new jobs in the Western Cape in the last year.
I'm struggling with that statistic because, I mean, you're saying 90%, 98% of all new jobs.
Of net new jobs.
Net new jobs.
Net
created,
new jobs
yes,
created in the DA-run Western
Africa.
Cape.
Oh, no.
Created in the DA-run Western Cape.
But is that on a national basis when you take that 98%?
Yes, it's on a national. 98% of all net new jobs in South Africa were created in the DA-run Western Cape. Only 2% came from the other 8 provinces.
Okay, I'd like to check out that
Go and
statistics,
check
but
it
go
out.
on, please.
We have got an economy that is working, that is creating jobs. Devolution is working. We'll be able to devolve policing powers down through the province to be able to ensure that we keep people safe. 14% reduction of crime year on year in priority crime areas. These are all things that have already been done. Next year gives us an opportunity to be able to change the trajectory of South Africa forever. We have an opportunity given to us by the fact that in the last local government election, the ANC lost its national majority. It ended up with 47% of the vote. That is declining. If the opposition and the multi-party charter can continue to work together and offer an alternative, I believe that we can open up a new era of government in the country. A government that's going to become an engine room of growth, of opportunity, and of jobs, and lots of them. We've already demonstrated where we govern, whether it's at a municipal level or whether it's at a provincial level, that the South African story doesn't need to be the one that the ANC has written, that we can write a new story for the country. But it's going to require people to register, and it's going to require people to vote. It's going to mean they've got to come out in large numbers and vote for that change. And that's what I certainly will be doing for the next 7 months. It's getting out on the ground across South Africa, giving people the fact that there is hope, that we can turn things around, that things can change. We can have a government that's delivering jobs. We can have a government that's teaching our children. We can ensure that our sick in public hospitals are healed. We can keep our people safe on the streets and in their homes. We can have lights and electricity in our homes, in our businesses, and in our grid. And we can have all of that and so much more. But we can't have it if the current government continues. And that is why change is necessary to rescue South Africa. Thank you.
Just one small follow-up question, and it may sound a little unfair, but it's a perception that's there, and I think I would be amiss if I did not raise it. The perception that the DA is focused on becoming a party for the minority and not serving the interests of other it's not race groups, but other communities, in particular the poorest.
Well, sorry, Godfrey, that is fundamentally disproved by everything I've just spoken about. The largest beneficiary of good, clean, accountable government in DA-run municipalities
but you have heard
in the
it,
Western
right?
Cape. Well, of
Have
course
you
I've
heard
heard
that
it. I've heard
perception?
it being
Yes.
said by my opponents.
Oh, yeah, sure, okay.
I've heard it said
Okay,
about my
okay.
opponents.
It's not me, I'm just raising it.
I've
so
heard
I
it
want
said
to be
about my
clear.
opponents, and
Sure.
it's a lie. It's an absolute lie. The biggest beneficiary of good, clean, accountable government are the poor in South Africa, which is why the highest access to basic services, government's own statistics, in DA-run Western Cape. Top-performing municipalities that are delivering services to the poorest of the poor, eradicating bucket systems, ensuring people have electricity in their homes, the fact that people have homes at all, are in DA-run municipalities. Biggest beneficiaries of the type of governance that the DA delivers, with clean audits in its provincial government departments, which shows that the money is being spent on the people and not on the politicians, are poor South Africans, who have frankly been far too long marginalized by the extractive, rent-seeking policies of the national government. So I reject that analysis in its entirety. It is not borne out by either the facts. The notion as well, because I'm sure that's going to be the next thing that's pulled out, that Cape Town is unequal. Cape Town is not. It's by far one of the least unequal municipalities in the world. The Buffalo City in South Africa is the most unequal municipality in the world.
Give him a chance.
More people have access to jobs, and you can call lie as much as you want.
Let's give him a
You can
chance.
call it lying as much as you want. The reality is 75% of the budget in the city of Cape Town goes towards previously excluded and marginalized communities. The amount of money being spent on infrastructure in the city of Cape Town is double the budget of Durban and Johannesburg put together. That is a government that is delivering. So you can shout lie as much as you want. That is the facts. Thank you.
All right, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Mbalula?
I will be very brief.
Thank you.
In our language, they say,
Let's keep it civil, please.
tell no lies, claim no easy victories. The journey up to this far has been very difficult, but it is not without its successes and difficulties. And I think what we commit ourselves, and which is key, is the boldness of the ANC government to implement the reforms. I will take, for instance, we have passed a rail policy, very progressive in this country. All what we need is the implementation of the reforms as determined by the rail policy. You talk about our situation of freight and logistics, and what private sector have committed itself to do in relation to assisting government to speed up the reforms in the freight and rail and logistics sector. It has taken us some time to implement, and that is a fact. And we have now said that it is important to speed up reforms. That's the most important thing. The second one is that our people are disillusioned about state capacity and its authority in terms of addressing lawlessness in the country. It's a fact that we've got zamazamas, and we've got a big response now with the army on the ground and boots on the ground. It's a fact that crime is devastating to our people. That we've got that response now of the army and everyone on the ground seeks to address that particular challenge. We may have taken time to intervene and address that. So we need to be decisive to strengthen the law enforcement capacity, particularly in fighting complicated criminal activities. The strengthening of DCO, going back to the Scorpions approach and model, is key for us going forward.
Sure.
And as I conclude, I think there's a distortion about cadre policy. We must not conflate the party and the state, because what the ANC does in terms of the party is to get the best of the best within its ranks to participate.
Sure.
And therefore, within the civil service, we've got people who are not even members of the ANC who lead government departments and have failed, and others in the parastatals with good qualifications, and that's it.
Sure.
The notion that black people and Africans cannot deliver, and therefore it is questionable, it is wrong. ESCOM and many other entities, we gave them to the best of the best, who some of them are not even Africans. They actually gave us more load shedding to the point where we are today.
Sure.
We have committed to the IPPs. The just transition must be implemented in our own terms. It has actually decapacitated us to the point where we've got challenges of load shedding today. So just transition must just be just transition. And that is what is important. Germany today is still maintaining coal supply and power, Russia and many other countries. South Africa was in the forefront to decommission some of our plants in order to meet the standards of the just transition.
Sure.
Look at where we are now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sorry, I had to hurry you along a little bit. We're running out of time. We live in the digital age. My colleague Zinga has just Googled very quickly for me on Africa Check that stat that I raised with John. It turns out, John, you're correct statistically. But the point is also made. This is now on Africa Check. They say while the DA's calculations for the last quarter of 2022 may be mathematically correct, theirs isn't a particularly useful comparison.
Well,
semantics.
It's correct.
Fair enough.
So I hope I'm going to get an apology from the gentleman who was hurling epithets from the audience.
I think we have been fair.
Just like us.
I think we've been fair. Mr. Mashaba, please, the floor is yours, sir.
I think as South Africans, I would really want to really caution John and the DA to use the Western Cape as a success story. I'm a 64-year-old black South African. Lived more than half of my life under our apartheid system, building great infrastructure, but great infrastructure aimed at a few white communities. And I can tell you, my first visit to the West, to Cape Town, was in January of 1985. A week before I started Black Lives Matter, I wanted a break. And I've been to Cape Town many times thereafter, and I'm mainly working in the townships.
Sure.
And if I look at the townships today in the Western Cape and they were in 1985, I can tell you the lived experience of people of Gugulethu and Khayelitsha. I can tell you, John, please don't really make that mistake of saying you're a best-run municipality or government, because I think people must really be very careful about what the Auditor General reports on. Auditor General does not report, because luckily I've had a privilege of being a mayor for 3 years. What the Auditor General reports on is your budget, allocation, and so forth.
Sure.
And once you've put in your budget and you spend money according to your budget, that's when you get the kind
reports.
of the report. But not where, because the Auditor General is not the one to tell you where to go and spend money in Khayelitsha and give people of Khayelitsha the dignity. It is for that reason that part of the discussion we're having with the DA, for us to ensure that we run an effective coalition, they must understand we don't only provide services to people who voted for us. We provide the services to everyone, more especially the poor, because the poor are not poor because of they happen to be black by nature. They are poor because of colonialism, because of apartheid, because of ANC's 30 years of misrule. So we need to be proactive in ensuring that we address that. So the DA's policy to say that nature must sort this out, that's for us as Section SA, it's not negotiable.
Got you.
We have to ensure that we provide the services to the poor, and that is for us as Section SA, is not negotiable.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. I forgot to ask Mr. Mbalula one question, because there are people who say, why should you be given a second chance? You've wasted 30 years. But that discussion, I think, will take us all night. Please help me to thank my guests. I really appreciate the fact that the exchanges are cordial and that this is a fight of ideas. It is not a fight of personalities, nor is it about where I come from and how I look. So thank you very much for that civility. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Sorry. One more small point. Protocol isn't done. Have you just hijacked the microphone? Yes, you have. I don't know, is that it?
Because the agreement was we didn't raise questions, but you know, I want, as CEO of the European House Ambrosetti, to express my gratitude on behalf of all the platform we represent. We have more than 200 business leaders, not only from South Africa, but also from SADC countries, and 1/4 from Italy and Europe. So we appreciated very much the frankness, and your kind availability was not given, was not granted, and we appreciated your generosity and the time together. So thank you very much. And to the leader of ANC, he was very clear about alliances and coalitions, but in case you change your idea, I have to my right side here the president, the former president of the Italian government. He's a master in coalitions. So in case you need any advice and you change your mind, count on President Letta for your future. And again, thank you to all. And I hope, John, you appreciated our fact-checking live about the data that we measured behind to support the numbers.
Oh,
I'm the only one who got fact-checked.
Thanks to everybody. Thank you, Herman, for your support.
Thank you. Please allow me to call upon Mr. Pietro Minini. He's the CEO of the European House Ambrosetti Africa. Pietro, where are you? Where's he gone? Oh. Okay. So, you'll have to begin by introducing yourself.
Sorry?
I said you'll have to begin by introducing yourself. Thanks very
Okay,
much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Thank you very much for being here. By the way, my name is Paolo Borzatta, and I am a board member of Ambrosetti and also of the European House Ambrosetti, and the deputy chairman of Ambrosetti Africa, the European House Ambrosetti Africa. Actually, I was here 10 years ago when we started this exercise. And I wanted to start talking about the number 10. Because the number 10 is very important in my life. You may ask yourself why I want to bother you with number 10 for the importance in my life. But in my first part of my life, when I was a student, 10 was the highest mark that I could get at school, and was a dream for me. In the second part of my life, when I was a young man looking for beautiful young girls, 10 was the mark that a famous movie, the title was 10, in 1979, with Bo Derek, I think was the actress, was the maximum mark that a male could give to a girl, and that was a dream for me. In the last part of my life, this one, 10 is the number that I announced 10 years ago when I opened the first CEO dialogue in Cape Town, saying that I promise you to be here at least for 10 years. Here we are. And 10 years it's a long period of time. I think it's time to think about what we have done and to reflect on what we have done and to take suggestions for the future. I know that it's late. We had 2 wonderful hours with our political leaders. Thank you very much also from my side. I will be very short. I touch 5 points. Thanks, our mission being here, the results that we've got, what we have learned, and what we should do in the future. Well, my colleagues this morning thanked all of you with naming all of you, so I will not repeat it. Just for the sake of time, I want to thank the partners, I want the institutions, all the operational teams that are here, and of course the participants. So thank you very much. What is our mission here, our mission of us? I think that we are here to improve our businesses, our companies, our countries, and maybe our life. And the tool that we are using is this dialogue of CEOs. which is an interesting tool because we talk as CEOs in this context, in this room, we talk about many, many aspects of the business life and also of the political life of a country, like this one. We started many years ago saying that we wanted knowledge, personal feeling, and trust. This is what we are building here. And Pietro this morning also told you all these important goals that we have. This is what we are doing here. And I wanted to underline the fact that CEOs, leaders of businesses, are here to talk about everything that is important for their country and their business, and not only of the technicalities of their business. I believe that this is one of the strengths that we have with this exercise. What are the results? My colleague this morning, Valerio, gave you a lot of results that we got in these years. I don't want to repeat them. You can see his presentation in our website. But I do believe that the most important result that we have got is that we are here. For what I understand, before this dialogue, there was nothing similar to this in South Africa, and also there was nothing similar to this in many other countries. We are creating this kind of exercise in many countries around the world, and we are very proud of it. You may say, okay, it's just selling his goods, but I do believe in what I'm saying. I think that this is also a positive thing to believe, to feel that we are here together after 10 years. I have to say, and I don't want to comment if South Africa has improved or not in these 10 years, if Europe has improved or not in these 10 years. What I'm sure is the world has not improved. 10 years ago, when we started this exercise, I think that we did not expect a war inside Europe. We did not expect the situation in the Middle East. We did not expect the crisis that we had, unfortunately. But we are resilient, and being together, I think that we can overcome these problems. What we have learned, well, I know that you don't have 2 hours to listen to all the things that we, at least I believe that we have learned. Let me list only the 3 or 4 that I believe that we have learned together. First of all, there is a need for a cross-industry platform for CEO meetings like this one, in Africa and in Europe, between African and European leaders. This platform, in my opinion, I learned that there is this need because the fact that it is successful means that we are providing value with this platform. This platform should be multifaceted with not only this summit, this CEO dialogue, but also our club, our CEO community. And what I want to propose to my colleague in Ambrosetti, in the European House Ambrosetti, is to consider also to have a platform for middle managers, African and European middle managers, doing the same things that we are doing here. We do this in Italy, and it is very powerful. Why not also in this country? Another important thing that we have learned is that Africa is a continent with many different countries, different cultures, different economies, but what we have learned is that at least that they should be integrated in a very intelligent and smart way. And why? Because they have to compete, Africa has to compete with big boys like the United States, like India, like China, and if you are not together, you do not compete with these big boys. But being together as the CEOs, I think that we can, and in this room there are many CEOs from, not only from South Africa, and also from Europe. This is very important to have this feeling of integrating the, at least the business intricacies and the business relationship in Africa and in Europe. Another thing that I have to say very, very candidly is that Europe is not very well known in this part of the world. And you know Italy, you know France, you know Germany, and so on. This is what I've learned in these 10 years. And I do believe that what we wanted to tell you, and what you should also learn with us, is that Europe does exist, and Europe is the most important investor in this part of the world. The trade with Europe is very important. Remember that Europe is here, and also if sometimes we use different labels to call us Europeans. Another important thing that I've learned, I have listened to 10 years of CEOs meetings and panels. Very good. CEOs are very, very good in detecting problems and the challenges. I'm not so sure that they've been very good in proposing solutions. And I think that this is something that we should take into consideration. And if we learn this, we should do something in this respect. What we should do more? Well, many things again. Enlarge our platform. As I told you, maybe we could also open a platform for middle management. We should continue to enlarge our CEO community to other countries, at least in Southern Africa and in Europe. Very important, in my opinion, is to put together more strategic papers like the one that we presented this morning. Actually, Mr. Henny Heymans presented it about unlocking the agro-industry potential in Africa. Why I believe it's very important for CEOs like we are to make more, to produce more papers like this. Because a paper produced by a community like ours is a super partes paper. We do not take a position on one side, the other side, one political side, another political side, one philosophy or not. We are super partes. We are taking into consideration the objective needs of our countries. And I believe that this is the most important part of what we are doing here. I could go on for a lot of time. 10 years ago, I started saying, I promise you that we will be here at least for 10 years. Now I don't want to put another term for being here, also because I'm a bit old, so I'm not so sure that I can promise the same thing. But I want to promise another thing. We want to be here until we have accomplished the results that we are talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paolo Bozzata, board member of the European House Ambrosetti and deputy chairman of European House Ambrosetti Africa. Really appreciate your closing comments. And a big thank you to the chief editor of CNBC Africa, Mr. Godfrey Mutizwa, for the expert handling of that panel. I think it's testament to the incredible, robust, and world-class democracy that we have in South Africa, that we can have discussions like this and have people disagreeing on points but being collegial towards each other, seeing the Secretary General of the ANC and leaders of the Democratic Alliance and Action SA being in conversation, shaking hands afterwards. Really, there's very few countries like South Africa. Just before we wrap, a note that we heard about the importance of diversity of voices, women and youth. Sometimes on the panel that wasn't reflected. That wasn't because people weren't asked. A lot of the women who were asked to come unfortunately couldn't make it because they were busy running boardrooms and meetings outside of these rooms. But I know next year there will be a bigger push and we will see a difference on the panels there. As we wrap, I'd like to once again thank the participants and sponsors, including but not limited to DHL, MA, CISL, BBM Law, Special Economic Zone, and the sponsors that we can see on our screens there. Just a note that at 7 p.m. there is going to be an invite-only dinner. If you've received an invite, we're looking forward to seeing you. If you haven't, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. It's been a pleasure and a privilege being your program director today. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and a big round of applause for our panel as well. Thank you. Thank you.